people, it's me, Arlene J. Ramsey, CEO and founder of Everyone Let's Talk, also your favorite self-wealth mentor. So today we will discuss ADD and ADHD. All right, so I looked it up. ADD stands for Attention Deficit Disorder, correct? Okay, and ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, correct? Okay, correct. I have a problem with the fact that they're labeling these children with disorder, and the fact that they're labeling them to have an attention deficit. Now, you guys understand what deficit means, correct? Deficit basically means lacking something or a loss of something, correct? All right, now when I observe these children, I clearly see that they don't have an attention deficit. All right, they have an attention deficit to things that they aren't concerned with. But the things that they are concerned with, they have no problem concentrating or having or putting their attention on it. So do they actually have an attention deficit? Because we're saying attention. Now that's generalized. We're not breaking down what it is that they're having a problem having attention and putting forth their attention on. They're just labeling them ADD and ADHD, attention deficit or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Totally false. Totally false. All right. I also have a problem with the fact that they are labeling the children with such because, or let me just say, we have to be careful on what it is that we label our children and the words we use, because that programs them to think that something is wrong with them and that they need medication to fix the problem, when that is clearly not the case. Now again, don't quote me on this, because I am not a doctor. I've never went to college or school for any of this stuff. This is as per my observation of children who were labeled as such, and also observation of myself. Because if I had to go and test myself on the test that they use in order to diagnose these children, I can tell you that I would have been diagnosed with ADHD, because I was very hyper, right? Hyperactivity is what they call it. But when I describe these children, I say they have a lot of energy. That's the real word for it. They are very energetic. All right, and they should be. They're young. They have no broken bones. Nothing's wrong with their system. They're supposed to take off like a rocket. If it's within their nature to just be like jackrabbits and jump around, does that mean that something's wrong with these children? All right, and who are these people that are putting such labels on these children? What do these people consider to be a normal functioning person? Let me, in my opinion, this is nothing but the opposites of nature, and opposites of a person's characteristics, and not understanding each other's characteristics. That's all it is. So when it's opposite and you don't understand, you tend to give it a label and say something's wrong with it. Well, who's to say something's not wrong with these doctors who gave these children this label, right? Because if you can walk around like a robot and conform to everything that you've been told to do, and you have no personality and no advocacy for anything, in my opinion, I think something's wrong with you. And that there's nothing wrong with these children. So let me tell you what I think. As I said again, they have no problem paying attention and putting forth the attention onto things that they want to do. With children as such, they have a hard time conforming, and they do not conform. It's not something that's within their system. So the problem with children like this, or the challenge I shall say, that adults have with children such as these, which I call, and the rest of the world who are inclined or in tune call these children indigo children. They're not ADD or ADHD. They are indigo children. I would like you to look that up. All right. The problem is, or the challenge is that they do not negotiate any of who they are towards a system which conforms. And when I say negotiate, All right, children know how to negotiate. They just don't realize they're negotiating. So when you tell them, okay, you got to do your homework, you got to do your chores, you got to do this, that, and the third, and then you can do this, that, and the third, they go and they conform and they go right along with it. Indigo children cannot do it because it knocks them totally out of alignment with who they are as children. So they are totally incapable of doing the conformity role first, then getting to negotiate to do who they are, put forth the energy to who they are. The roles have to be reversed, and you would have to learn how to negotiate them and teach them how to conform. That's the challenge. So you would have to, as a parent or even as a school teacher, put forth the effort into doing more of what these children are more spiritually inclined into doing. Whatever they're inclined to doing, you put forth that energy to do that. Of course, if it's positive, okay, because we're not talking about children that wants to kill animals and those sort of things. All right, don't get me wrong. We're talking about positive activity which when these children do, you can see that they're more connected and aligned with what it is that they want to do. That is what you need to put forth your energy on, helping, building, and creating this child to be better up. And then when you do that, you can negotiate with that very same child to put forth 2 hours of chores, 2 hours of schoolwork, 2 hours of this, 2 hours of that, of what the rest of the world requires people to do. That's the difference. The difference is the shift. So these children I call the epitome of the paradigm shift. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these children. All right. And then with the ADHD, again, it's hyperactivity. I want to make that clear. It's just that those are the children that have a lot of energy, right? So versus the children that just have ADHD, they're more so able easily to control as far as their activity, their energy. They can sit down and they can just do what they see fit to do. A child who is labeled with ADHD has a lot of energy, so they just can't sit still. They're like jackrabbits and they're all over the place, as I've mentioned before. So you have to find some things to keep them busy. All right, take them to the park. Make sure they're outside. Those are the type of children that has to stay busy. And keeping them busy with house chores is not keeping them busy doing it's different. Okay, that child will feel like you don't love him or her, and they're going to feel like they're being a slave because you're just making them do stuff that you don't want to do, and it's totally no fun, and it has absolutely nothing to do with who they are as people. So it will not make them happy. Keeping them busy doing that is no good. But when you keep them busy doing things that they are naturally inclined to do, you will see a big difference in your children. All right. Also, children like this, again, indigo children, is children that you have to have a spiritual connection and bond with. If you think about it, the children who conform because they don't want to get whipped and they don't want to go on punishment and they don't want to this, that, and the third, and they do what you tell them to do, there's actually no spiritual bonding or connection going on between the adult and that child, because you really don't know who your child is, because they're doing too much of what you tell them to do based off of the consequences, right? But with an indigo child, they're teaching you how to negotiate with a child at a very young age. And in order for you to negotiate with your child, you have to know how they are. So there's telepathic communication going on. There's telekinesis going on. It's a great thing dealing with an indigo child. You become a totally different person. They teach you how to be in tune with God and the universe. It's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with those children. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. And yes, they fail in school because, again, it's too much of conformity going on and not enough of universal nature going on. But again, if you negotiate it and you gave them more of who they are, you'll be surprised. Peace, people. We got cut off, but in a nutshell, You have to allow children who have been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD to be more of who they are versus who the world wants them to be. That's just what it is in a nutshell. All right. Now, the next thing I wanted to get into is children who have been diagnosed with autism. All right. Let me read what autism means. It stands for a mental condition present from early childhood, characterized by difficulty in communicating and forming relationships with other people, and in using language and abstract concepts. Let me tell you that children who have been diagnosed with autism, in my opinion, is a runoff of the children who have been diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, because children who have been diagnosed with such can still socialize and still be around people. They may be a nuisance when they're around a group of people or so on, but they still want to interact with other people, so they interact being a total nuisance to people who don't understand who they are. Children with autism is a children that's going to just shut down when they pick up on the vibe that you don't understand them and that you don't want to understand them. Because not understanding a person is not really a problem, right? It's okay to not understand, but when you don't want to understand a child, that's a problem to a child that has autism. And again, this is based off of my observation of the children who have been diagnosed with such. I had the wonderful opportunity to work with a young boy, I think he was about 7 years old, who was diagnosed with autism. And back then I didn't understand. I didn't read the definition of autism, so these labels come with medication. That's something that I know. So as I interacted with this boy, I said, well, he doesn't need medication. There's nothing wrong with this child. Now let me tell you something. At first he was completely shut down, and this is just was his personality. And then I take it that when it comes to people that don't know him, he's shut down from the very beginnings, because he's so accustomed to people not wanting to understand who he is and mistreating him because of who he is, that he's just shut down completely. But I remember asking him certain questions and saying certain things to him, and watching him, his expression rather, put his head down, he's looking around, I can tell he's thinking. And when he gives me his answer to whatever it is that I'm asking him or conversing with him, he's assertive and he's on point in the way he can be, and then some things he told me had me shocked, and I'm like, wow, well, that's amazing. Well, then how did you come up with that? Now I'm asking him, how did he come up with his perspective? And then he gets to explain to me how he came up with that answer. So as we conversed and interacted more, he was more open. So when he see me, he was no longer the serious 8-year-old boy. And he was a Gemini, by the way. I called him the young general of the group. Called him the young general because that was him. I see him in the making. In a couple of years, he is going to be the general. And I said, but I remember talking to the people at the place, and I said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this child. He doesn't need medicine at all. What the problem is he's surrounded by people who don't care to understand people that they don't understand. When they don't understand you and when you're different, they tend to call you names. They tend to push you to the side. They tend to say, oh, what is he talking about? I'm going in the opposite direction. And they act like you have lupus or something. Like you really have a disease that's contagious that they can catch. That if they touch you, their skin is gonna break out into a rash or something. That's how they act. That's how people act when they come across someone who's totally different and someone that they don't understand. They act like you have some type of sickness or disease that they don't want to catch. And that's a terrible thing. So for the children who have autism, I have to ask the parents, what is your reaction to your child? When you don't understand your child, what do you say? What do you do? How do you treat them? Because they pick up, everything is vibrational. We don't realize it, but they pick up on your vibes. So if they pick up on the fact that you think that they are less than, You don't want to learn who they are. You call them stupid, or you make those little remarks. You walk away when they do things that you don't understand, and then you don't ask them questions, open questions. Not ask them questions and try to bully them into doing and answering things in a way you want them to answer. Because there's two different ways of asking questions. But when you honestly ask them open questions, when you're curious and you want to know, they wouldn't, I don't foresee a child having autism. I don't foresee it. Now again, I'm going to say again, don't quote me on this because I'm not a doctor. I can just give you what I'm giving you based off of my observation of these children who have been diagnosed with autism. Now, I can totally see where I can diagnose myself with autism, because when I'm just around certain activity, or when I'm around people who totally don't care to understand me, because I can pick up on those vibes. If you don't care to understand me, I don't have to have a conversation or communicate or exchange with you at all. I don't have to do it, and I don't do it. And that's what I love about myself. I can care less. People have said names, called me names, have walked off, rolled their eyes. I can care less. If I know that you don't care to learn who I am, and when I open my mouth and say certain things, you start treating me like I have lupus or AIDS or some type of disease, that if you touch me or if you listen to me for too long, you'll break out into a rash or turn into something other than who you are. I don't have to converse with you. I don't have to do it. I'll save my energy and I'll converse with people who want to understand. And I'm not trying to bully anybody into understanding me, but I'm giving you a bit of how I see things and how I think, so you can understand that child who has autism. Right? Now, I'm not saying that some children may not need medication for whatever the problem is, because again, I don't have children, and again, I'm telling you this based off of my observation. But if I was to throw numbers out there, let me throw out some numbers. Out of 100%, I will say that 85% of the children that have been diagnosed with either ADD, ADHD, or autism do not need medication. Maybe 15% of them do. The majority of them don't. It is just a condition. They condition themselves to be in such a way because they're misunderstood. And their behavior is coming off as totally irrational. But then again, they're children and they are unable to articulate and advocate for who they are because they don't understand who they are. They don't know that. And then when you don't try to understand them, how can you teach them who they are? You're robbing your children of their identity. Adults, let's get it together here. We have our egos are in the way. We have a certain, how can I say, we want our children to live up to a certain standard. We want to live up to the dreams and the expectations we have for them, other than getting to know who they are and then creating expectations or dreams. Let me not even say expectations. Well, let me say because you want to have some expectations as well. Expectations help you with your dreams and your goal. So you want to create expectations, dreams, and goals around the being of your children, right? Versus around your being. That's the difference with indigo children that have been diagnosed with all this foolishness and fuckery, if you ask me. It's ridiculous. All right. The difference with them is you have to learn who they are and create the world around who they are and allow them to be. All right. I say this again. Plenty of people in the world say we don't have good leaders. Where are the Malcolm X's and the Harriet Tubmans and the Frederick Douglasses and all the names you guys name? But they're right here within your children. The same children that you guys are allowing these doctors to diagnose with all this foolishness, you're robbing them of who they are. See, God, Allah, the universe, whatever the name you call the source, it's one source. The Creator have created them to be just that. Alright, when you think about the children that have A.D.H.D with hyperactivity and a lot of energy,